everybody. My name is Emily. I am one of the admissions representatives here at Design Lab. Thank you so much for joining us today for our data-driven design, 5 things I learned the hard way with Jessica Goldman. Jessica is going to be jumping into her side of the presentation soon. But before we get in there, I'm just going to give a couple more minutes for more folks to show up and kind of explain a little bit of the format of how the webinar is going to be conducted so that everyone can feel good about moving forward. So first things first, if you look in the lower right-hand side of your screen, you'll be able to see that there is a toggle for the chat and then a toggle for some questions. You can definitely feel free to say hi in the chat, tell everyone where we're tuning in from. You can definitely feel free to share like LinkedIn information if you'd like. These are all folks that are here for largely the same reasons. So you can definitely say hello in the chat. I will say hi as well. Hi, everyone. And yeah, definitely, just feel free to share anything that you'd like as far as, why you're interested in the data-driven design course, why you're interested in learning more about data-driven design. As I mentioned, you can feel free to do a little networking if you'd like. And then if you look right to the left-hand side of the chat button, you'll see that there is a questions button. We're going to do a Q&A at the end of the presentation with Jessica and myself. Jessica is going to be chatting through, 5 things that she learned the hard way about data-driven design and using data in her UX and product design journey and experience. And then at the end of her presentation, we're going to swap back to me and I'm going to chat a little bit about our data-driven design course, what it's about, how you can get involved. I would recommend if you have questions for Jessica, you prioritize those because as a member of the internal design lab team, I'm going to give you some ways to contact me, contact my partner, Kelly, who is also working on this course and is more of a UX UI data expert as well. So, any questions that you have for the design lab team, we can always, get back to you later. Cool. And just as a reminder, we are going to be launching that data-driven design course in June. If you need to leave, let's say right after Jessica's portion, but you want to learn more about the data-driven design course that we're going to be offering, everyone who participates in this webinar will be sent a recording. So you can always reference info later, and we'll be sharing out ways to get in touch as well. Cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for saying hello, telling where you're tuning in from. We have almost 100 people that have joined now, which is fantastic. So I am going to go ahead and hand over to Jessica, and I'm going to be quiet for a while. Go ahead, Jessica. Oh, you're still muted.
I clicked the button and it didn't unclick. That's what happened.
It happens to the best of us.
I was like, click, and it just stayed muted. Alrighty, everyone can see my screen okay? All right, well, hi, everyone. So my name's Jessica. Nice to meet you. I'm a senior product designer, and I currently work at Gusto, which is an online payroll software. I've been designing for what feels like forever. I've been, everything from, learning Photoshop in high school to yearbook to taking on any kind of freelance project I can take on to discovering UX. And this is a photo of me and my pup, Luna. I took her to Sedona recently. She's basically my other half, and we live in Culver City, California. So a little bit about my background. Most of my career I spent actually starting at boutique agencies doing a lot of digital marketing. Because I had a graphic design background and I minored in graphic design, ended up just doing a lot of design work and ended up just kind of transitioning that into like a freelance gig for a little bit, but realized very quickly, didn't love graphic design too much, needed more, discovered UX, went through a boot camp like most of you probably did. And then I got hired at Omaze right after, which was really exciting. I spent a few years there. That was very much sweepstakes and crowdfunding type work. Spent a little bit of time at Therabody, which is the makers of the Theragun massage gun. And that was very much e-commerce and a digital app. And then now I'm at Gusto, where I'm on the growth acquisition team. So I'm going to dive right into the 5 things that I learned the hard way. So the first thing that I learned is you don't actually need to be a numbers or data expert to be a data-driven designer. I'm not good at math. I'll never be good at math. It's just not my strongest subject. And I get plenty overwhelmed looking at like busy Excel spreadsheets and dashboards and things like that. I never really thought that numbers were going to be a part of my job, but it kind of was just like, I just got like a crash course in working with data when I started out at Omaze. But what I found is that it is important for us to learn how to communicate with our teammates who are talking about the data. So for us, it's like basically for our product managers, our business leaders, our data analysts, they're all looking at the data to make decisions. They're all talking about it. The best thing for us to do is to speak the same language as them. Otherwise, it'll be harder to get our designs pushed through. Because, and some of you might realize this, but when you realize that you're not like speaking the same language as the rest of your team, that's when you find yourself going back to Figma over and over and over again until the design ultimately ends up being whatever your product manager asked for. Or you're like, why are you asking me to put this ad here? Why do I have to put this button here? A lot of times it could be that disconnect between what the product manager is looking for in order to hit business metrics, which doesn't always align with the user and what they want. So what I found, there's like really a lot of easy ways while you're on the job to just kind of like get yourself involved in the conversation and pick up data like on the job. At Omaze, I really got a crash course in working with really incredibly smart, data-driven people. We had a whole analytics team. We had, an external team that was helping us with data as well. I knew nothing. And so really, I just came in with like no knowledge of data. I came from a social media and a graphic design background, but I was really grateful that I had a manager and a product manager that really made sure that I was like joining meetings and building partnerships with all of these data-driven people so that I was involved in the conversation and included in whatever they were talking about. Really what I found is like the most effective thing is just ask to be included in meetings. If you're not in them already, just ask to get included, ask to get involved in, ask to be added to the Slack channels. Really just be a part of the conversation. It's often the first step. Really, it's just getting your foot in the door so you can see what everyone else is seeing at the same time, even if you don't know what it means yet. Another really simple but powerful tool is also just like setting up time with your product managers. And so what that can look like is really just saying, hey, like that chart you guys were looking at the other day, like, can you walk me through the details and how I can connect that back to my work? And what I found is product managers really, they love helping you out with that kind of stuff. And so really taking advantage of people on your team, setting up some time with them and having them break down really whatever it is that they're looking at for you. And really last but not least, speaking up, ask questions. Really, whenever you're confused, just say, hey, I don't understand. Can you explain this in more detail for me? Like that, I found that like I'm never the only one that's confused. And when I like comment on Slack or raise my hand in a meeting, more often than not, someone else has the same question and it starts a pretty interesting conversation. And sometimes you might find maybe they don't really know what they're talking about either. And there's something that everyone needs to dig into a little bit more. And so not being afraid to ask questions, getting your foot in the door, and just setting up some time with people to have people explain to you what on earth it is they're talking about. For number two, what I found is more often than not, product managers, business leaders, really anyone who's making decisions at your company, they're staring at dashboards all day long and they're relying on these charts to have all of the answers about why the numbers are the way they are. But the numbers won't tell you everything. They'll give you a lot of information, but they're really just not going to give you all of the true insights that you need. And so I actually have a story about this. So my time at Omaze, so to give a little bit of background actually about Omaze, where it was an online fundraising platform that gave people the chance to donate for a chance to win awesome prizes like cars, a celebrity experience, and you got to donate to your favorite charity in exchange for entries for the chance to win. So the team that I was on at the time was hoping to increase conversion. So when people would land on our primary sweepstakes page after seeing an ad, our goal was to figure out how can we get enough people to not just donate to win, but donate at a high amount. Because you could also enter for free. And so the goal was how can we sway people away from entering for free to actually donate? So to do that, we were running A/B testing, which basically meant we would spit up another design of the page. We would change something on the page. And through statistical analysis, we would figure out which is actually going to perform better at conversion. And we didn't actually do that statistical analysis. We had a tool that did all of it itself. But we were able to kind of spin up a bunch of different designs to see what would perform better and what could get people to convert at a higher rate. So one of our tests that we did, this was one of our first tests that we ran, we wanted to take advantage of like charity quotes and like statistics about the charity to kind of help convince them to donate at a higher amount. We had a strong hypothesis rooted in customer research and insights. We were really confident that highlighting the charity more on this page would help people understand the impact of their donation and help convince them to donate at a higher amount. So the design that we launched, and you can see in the slide here, well, you can't see it in here because I don't have the picture of it. I'm so sorry, it was so long ago. But we added like a charity like message. So sometimes it was a quote from the charity. Sometimes it was a little statistic that said, your $25 can fund this thing. And so we added this on this page, we ran some tests, and the results came back really kind of muddy. They were really inconclusive. No one really knew, like, does it actually work? And so because we were all like really unsure what was going on, it was really easy to kind of see the inconclusive results and kind of come to the conclusion that like the value props didn't really work to convince people to donate more. And so a lot of times in the situation, and this happened, I believe, in the situation as well, product managers were kind of just quick to move on. Like, all right, well, I guess that content didn't really work. Let's, try something else and move on to the next thing. But my design manager and I, we were like, no, no, no. Like, there's definitely something off here. Like, people are definitely convinced, people want to know more about the charity. It doesn't have to do with the content. And so we wanted to dig in a little bit deeper to understand why these numbers were so inconclusive. So we were grateful to have the tool called usertesting.com. And so we spun up a quick usability test with some users. We had them walk through all of the designs. And it turns out the page was so long and there's so much to digest and everyone's so excited about the chance to win a car that no one noticed it at all. They're all scrolling, and we're, and they're like, what quote? What statistic? And so the inconclusive results were really just because the design wasn't different enough for people to actually see that change and have it actually influence their purchasing decision. So we were able to kind of like go back to the team with these insights and say, hey, like, it's not the content. We still need to test into this hypothesis. It's still really important. It just might not be this place in the funnel. Maybe when we're trying to get people to enter to win, they care more about the car and they just like the fact that their money is going to a good place. So what we tried instead was actually shifting this to the end of the funnel, which was after a sweepstakes closed. So this was in the retention phase where we're trying to get people to like enter to win another sweepstakes after one has closed. So once a sweepstakes closed, most people, 99.9% of people did not win the prize. So you're bummed about that, but you want to find out who won. So we added a bunch of stuff to our closed sweepstakes page, which was like the total raise, how much, which was shockingly not there before, a little bit about the charity, and then also the same kind of information that we were testing earlier, which was, this is what this experience can fund. Here's how many things, here's how many people are supported, or here's how many things can get bought, etc. And this is where we saw significant gains and where we had really the most impact. And so really the lesson here was, don't just let people kind of like look at inconclusive results and move on. Like there might be something to kind of like really dig into there. And I'm glad that we ran testing on this because it really kind of kept the team. It kept the hypothesis that we had really top of mind so that people wouldn't kind of just dismiss it and say, well, I guess I don't really care about that and move on. So building off of that, your team, kind of like I mentioned, your team really needs your knowledge of the customer and your design intuition to help them make sense of messy data. Really, designers bring a unique lens to the table, and they really help connect the customer's mindset to the results that everyone's looking at. And really, what I like to believe is our designer's true power is our designer's true superpower is connecting our deep understanding of the user's wants, their needs, their pain points to the business metrics that everyone's looking at to come up with design solutions that please the users and make the business happy. And it seems like it's really challenging, but it's really like your knowledge of the customer is much more powerful than we often realize. So I have an example from Gusto. Gusto, like I mentioned previously, it's a payroll and HR software platform really built for small businesses. I'm on the growth team. So what that means is basically I'm focused specifically on acquisition. So basically we're trying to get people to, when they land on gusto.com, like sign up for Gusto, like convince them that it's a good fit, show them that why Gusto is a good platform for their business, and get them to actually create an account, sign up, and ultimately run payroll. The biggest pain point that we face as a team today is that we have a pretty high drop off from account creation to actually running payroll. So we get a lot of people to sign up and create an account, but the problem is they don't actually run payroll. So we see a lot of, we have really like high number of account creations, but not enough people actually running payroll. And what we need them to run payroll is because that's when they become a paying customer with Gusto. So basically you can like sign up for free, really get involved in the product, dig deep. And then once you run your first payroll is when you become a paying customer. So the shows in the data is that we have high account creation, but that's not matching to our revenue. So that's kind of where the growth team comes in, and that's where our big focus is right now. So when I first started at Gusto, I did a simple kind of like audit at the top of the funnel. This is kind of like what I like to do at every company before I start, is just go through the product. What am I noticing? What sticks out to me? And really what I noticed was all of our primary CTAs were asking people to create an account. So pretty much every primary CTA on the homepage, the main button, the navigation, everything was just create an account, sign up today, answer some questions, and then we just dive you directly into the product. However, the risk for that was we were having a lot of people create an account because we were kind of telling them to, but they weren't really ready to create an account. And so that is where my hypothesis kind of came in, is like, our site is driving people to create an account just because of the sheer, like the visuals that we have, all the button placements, etc. But people aren't actually ready to do that, and doesn't fully match kind of like the user's mindset. So my initial thinking was just like, okay, well, can we just not have this be our primary CTA? Well, the team was a little nervous to suddenly, switch our primary CTA and like lose a bunch of account creations, because that's our bread and butter. We need people to sign up and create an account. So I couldn't just kind of like go the extreme. I had to find workarounds. So I continued to dig into customer research as well. And the UXR team at Gusto was great. And they had done a Gusto diary study with shoppers. So basically a bunch of people that are like employers shopping for payroll. And what they found really is that the same thing that I was able to kind of infer from just going through, gusto.com, is that they just weren't ready to sign up. They're going through, there's a lot they want to learn. There's a lot of specific things that they need to understand, like, can this do this for my business? Does it have specifically what I need? Is the price, am I good with the price, etc. And so there's a lot of, and then they go into our site and it's kind of like just so much. There's a little bit of a rabbit hole effect where there's just so much content and they don't really know how to like pull out the content that's important for just them. So that was kind of my goal from here, was like, okay, how can we find a way to kind of like give people a chance to still learn more about Gusto, not fully sign up yet, but not just totally tank our account creations and have that be such a like drastic jump. So the first experiment that I was able to kind of get past was designing how we could reshape the funnel so that customers could feel like more guided by Gusto and actually trust that we're a good fit before they commit to signing up. I was able to kind of utilize the primary CTA in the homepage. And so instead of having that primary CTA be create account, I was able to have it be how Gusto works, which would then lead them into a page where they can choose all the things that they want to learn about. They can specifically say, like, I want to learn about payroll. I want to learn about our time tracking features, hiring, etc. Then they got sent to a learning journey where they could click around and really just dive into like the specific value props that we wanted them to take away. And then from there, then they go into account creation. And so our first pass at this, results were okay, like a couple % lift, but it really just wasn't enough. But there were some small signals. And so again, this is where I wanted to make sure my product manager didn't just go, well, maybe this isn't the right way to go. Like, this is a little muddy. So I made sure to figure out, how can I see what's actually happening? Unfortunately, at Gusto, we don't have usertesting.com, but we have a tool called Full Story. And what that enables us to do is we can track users' movements as they're going through the screen. So basically, it's like I can type in the string of the experiment that we're running and just watch people and just click, 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 watch people go through the whole thing. And I found there's just so many UX issues. Our cookie banner was in the way, like videos wouldn't load. There's a lot of things that came up that I didn't even notice QAing the test in previously when it was being built. And so I quickly kind of gathered all my notes and was able to get the engineers to make a bunch of changes, which is actually what you see on the screen today. So the thing that we launched before wasn't this exact layout. And that was able to increase CVR by about 15%. And so this was a really key moment where it was really, really important to pair like user behavior and what customers were actually doing to the numbers that we were seeing, to see where do we really need to make strides to make this more effective. And so just improving the UX was enough to really see that significant gain in CVR. So now I am continuing to work on this and want to further evolve this to my like ideal state where it's really a personalized journey. But for now, I think this is like a great first step to helping people better understand if Gusto is a good fit. For number 4, so this is a fun one. You really, sometimes design is really complicated. More often than not, it really is. But Also, you can really make an impact with really small changes. And that's something that I discovered just being on growth teams and working in experimentation, is the amount of impact that I was able to create by doing very, very simple design changes. And it's really powerful sometimes, like just listen to the user, say what they want, give them what they want, and then you see quite the win. So diving a little bit into my time at Therabody. So Therabody is the parent company of the makers of the popular Theragun, which is the really popular massage gun. You can see in the picture here. They're known for their sports partnerships. Basically, my goal was to focus on digital conversion on Therabody.com. So basically getting people to buy all the Theraguns and convince them to like buy the $600 massage gun, which was quite expensive. So again, like I did at Gusto and like I did at Omaze, I did a deep dive into who is the customer, what are they doing, what's their behavior, what's the site like? And going through the website, it was very easy to see that a lot of the information that I personally wanted to know about the Theragun, like how does it work? What are the cool things I can do? How does it benefit me? A lot of the information was lost. And the page, it was very designed to be like, look how pretty and cool the Theragun is. And it was very much taking an Apple approach to making the Theragun seem really cool. But what was missing was those key insights that say like, why should I get this over a knockoff? And so Theragun luckily had just received a market research report from some external company. And the key insights about the customer that came from there were people just wanted to understand how our massage guns benefit them and their needs. What are the use cases for owning a Theragun? What justifies this high price point? Why should they not just get a knockoff from Amazon or Costco? And people really want to understand the attachments. The Theragun comes with like a bunch of different unique attachments designed for different parts of the body. And it's very different than a lot of other massage guns out there. And so people really wanted to learn more about that. I also looked at the findings of a post-purchase survey that the team had run as well, which is basically every time someone bought a Theragun, screen popped up and said, hey, how was your experience? What could we improve, etc. All the responses, very similar. People wanted to know about the attachments. They wanted to see more videos of how it worked. It was very clear that this insight was kind of popping up in multiple different places. So the goal was to kind of think, okay, well, where's everyone coming to? They're all coming to this product detail page for the Theragun, and something about this page must not be working. And so what was really easy to discover just through looking at heat maps and click maps, like you can see in this picture here, people didn't scroll very far. So they got to the top of the page, they got to the button that says add to cart, maybe they scrolled a little bit farther. Most people didn't make it to the end. All that blue is like maybe 10, 20% of traffic. And same with the click map on the right. Most people are really just clicking on like the button, the main button. They're not really clicking around and engaging too much with the page. So what I tried to do was like, how can I design experiments within a very limited, I had a very limited tool set to figure out how can we help people understand why the Theragun is good for them without, really relying on too many engineering resources. And this was an interesting instance where we didn't actually have like a PM or a data team working on experimentation road mapping. It was actually just a bunch of designers building out our roadmaps and working to launch tests. And we had a nifty little tool called VWO. And so that enabled us to make the edits directly onto our site itself. And so that's how I basically ran all of my split tests at Therabody. It was just taking stuff, dragging it, changing text, changing images, etc., seeing what little things that I could do within the very limited capabilities that I had, while our engineers were focused on much more bigger and better projects. So one experiment that I did was just moving a component that was at the bottom of the page to the top of the page, and that was our attachments component. So as you can see on the left here, this component was at the very bottom of the page, and it was the thing that customers cared about the most. They really wanted to understand, like, what are all these attachments and how do they all work? Just simply moving that component higher helped increase CVR by about 15%. So that was like wild to me, that just all I had to do was drag it up higher, click launch, and then we saw amazing results. And our business manager was kind of able to like make those changes in our CMS, and it was good to go. The next test, another test that we ran here was the static image. So there was a component on the page for the Therabody companion app. which basically had all of these like routines and things that you can do with your Theragun. And the component that was previously there was like an animated video, bunch of different lifestyle images, all kind of floating together, very busy. Didn't really tell you much about the app itself. When we replaced it with the static image that we found, I actually found it on a different page. I just took it from a different page, copied it, pasted it onto this page, and it increased CVR by like 22%. And so these were just like two really simple examples of taking advantage of like content that already exists, playing around with hierarchy, and just really making things simple to really see quite the success. So yeah, my last one here, and building off of the simplicity of those tests, more often than not, you'll probably find like if it comes down to speed over making something pixel perfect, it's probably going to be speed that wins. But I found you don't need to sacrifice quality along the way. And I'm sure, if you work in a data-driven environment, or if you're familiar with tight deadlines and you're familiar with your product managers like cutting scope and like rushing to make things happen, it's challenging as a designer to like, you're constantly like grabbing that thing about like, no, I just want to make that one thing perfect. Like, let me fix the box. But what I found is that there's ways to kind of work around that to still maintain quality and still get out the work that you want to get out, even if you're kind of in an environment where everyone's like hustling to get things done. So really the key thing, and like I mentioned, you might have noticed actually in all of the experiences that I talked about, I focused all of my design changes on the areas of the site or the product that people were interacting with the most. So the most trafficked areas of the product. So with Omaze, it was, the primary landing page that everyone landed on. Same with Therabody. With Gusta, everyone lands on gusta.com, the homepage. And so the reason for that is that that's where most of the traffic is coming to. So we're able to get results faster. And the faster we're able to get results, the faster we can analyze the results, spin up another version of the test, and keep iterating again and again and again to then find out what is actually the best design to hit our metrics. Another thing that I found really helpful is just really focusing on the things that you can change that are really simple, like things that you can change that don't require a ton of engineering effort. So like changing to headlines, changing colors, visuals, playing around with like content, like images, videos, things like that. They can have quite the impact on, how people interpret your page and, whether or not they want to convert. And I think that was really important at Omaze, especially because I didn't have a reusable component library or like a design system. We had a design system in Figma, but as y'all know, if it's not matched up to code, it's not that helpful. And so I had to really kind of take advantage of our content team and really take advantage of like, how many different images can we test in this one place? How, what headlines are going to be the most powerful? Because I didn't have, engineering support necessarily to create like a custom interactive like feature. And luckily at Therabody, we actually did have a reusable component library, which was great. So the goal there was, how can I use these components to the best of my ability so that I don't need to ask engineering to create new ones? And that was how I was able to see a lot of like quick turnarounds on a lot of the tests that we ran, was because I was using components that already existed. And so that meant like our business manager could kind of like, fill in the content, push it live, and we didn't have to like, run it through an engineering sprint and have it take 2 to 4 weeks to come to fruition. So yeah, there's lots of ways, to figure out how to like make things more exciting and really maintain that quality, even if you're in a tight spot. So to recap, just a high-level overview of the things I talked about. So you really don't need to be a data or numbers expert to be a data-driven designer, but it is important for us to learn how to communicate with our teammates who are talking about the data. And that comes with just experience, asking to be in the meetings, like just getting yourself in the conversation. And the more that you hear stuff over and over and over again, the more things will just start to click and you'll start to understand, oh, I get what they're talking about now. The second one is, leaders often rely on dashboards to analyze and make decisions, but they're not going to tell you everything. Your team needs your knowledge of the customer. They need your design intuition. They need your research expertise to help them make sense of that messy data. Because more often than not, you're the only one that has that deep insight. And so when you bring that to the table, they're able to make those like deeper connections. Another thing is you can make a big impact with really small experiments. You can make it, you don't always have to have like a new custom, creative UI or like a crazy feature with a bunch of like animations to have a really big impact on your product. Sometimes it's just the simple things, changing up the words, changing up button copy, and sometimes that can have like a really big impact. And, if it comes down to, speed or making things perfect, you're going to have to get things through the door, but you don't have to sacrifice quality along the way. So yeah, I feel like I went through that pretty quickly, but yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for letting me share a little bit about my background in design.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jessica. I really appreciate you joining us today and providing this really interesting and informative presentation. I can tell from the comments and the questions that it's getting a lot of great responses, which is awesome. So real quick, I'm just going to ask you if you would stop sharing your screen so I can share mine before we get into the Q&A. I just want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about Design Lab's data-driven design. Cool. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Good? Cool. All right. So data-driven design. This is a new course that we are at Design Lab going to be introducing coming in June of this year. And why data-driven design? So we've identified, talking to, previous students, alumni, mentors, surveying just a ton of individuals in this field, that data-driven design is the #1 skill for designers to improve when working with product teams. So in our data-driven design course, we're going to have different ways for you to engage with this material and understand the basics of data-driven design. So it's going to be understanding the fundamentals of data-driven design. You're going to be improving your, oh goodness, I'm so sorry. Whoops, hold on. My computer's having a moment. Share, full screen sharing. There we go. And share. I know, right? It's Livestorm. It just likes to be temperamental. Cool. Can you all see my screen again? Perfect. All right. So the idea is that the course is here to help you understand the basics of what data-driven design really is and why it is such an important skill to help advance your career. And we're also going to discuss what it looks like to, for this, is what this might look like for different businesses. So there's going to be a lot of experimentation, a lot of data gathering. And while it's not specifically a research course, because we're going to be providing students with data and research, you're going to be crafting experimentation that really helps you understand and focus on key results that you need to use data to make informed decisions about your designs. We're going to talk about how to use data to make design recommendations and how that can not only support the user needs, but also the overall goals of the business that you're working for. So this course is really designed to help empower you to feel more comfortable integrating data in your design process and what that's going to mean for you as a designer. So in terms of the learning format, the course commitment is going to be about 3 to 4 hours per week, and it's going to be broken down into lessons that are going to cover core concepts of data-driven design. There's also going to be hands-on experience with concepts. You're going to be working through sample sets of practice projects. So we're going to provide you with a sample company, data sets, business objectives, and research findings. And those are going to allow you to practice key questions and considerations throughout your designing process. You are also going to work in small group sessions. These are going to be facilitated by an industry professional. That's going to be a mentor. And you're going to be working with them on a weekly basis with small groups of peers that are going to work with you throughout projects. This is going to give you a great opportunity to receive feedback, share your perspective with others, and really kind of mirror what it's like to work in a group in terms of working with data in your design work. In terms of the course overview, this is ideal for mid to senior level UX and product designers. It is a 6-week course, and it is going to be a time commitment, as I mentioned a minute ago, of about 3 to 5 hours per week. We say 3 to 4, but I always recommend just, being at Design Lab for quite some time, having a little bit of wiggle room in your schedule. Sometimes you will run into concepts that are slightly less intuitive, or that maybe you just want to dive into a little bit deeper and really sink your teeth in. So I always recommend having a little bit of extra time. The first cohort of this is going to launch on June 4th, and the price is $14.99. So I'm sure that you have a lot of questions for maybe myself and for Jessica. So I'm going to pop into the Q&A, and I'm just going to start fielding some of these questions to Jessica. And one thing I want to just say to everyone as well is that if we don't get to your question towards the end of the webinar in about 10 minutes, I'm going to just share out a link where you can schedule a call or you can email us and get in touch with Design Lab. So Jessica, for our first question is, how is data-driven design different from UX research?
Sure. So user research is really, I mean, the way that I like to think about it is that it's really diving into what the customer is thinking. It's really like the mindset, people's emotions, their feelings, all of that. Data-driven design is like making informed decisions based off of what's actually happening. Because of course you have user research, that's just people talking. But what you want to actually look at is like what's actually happening in your product. Are people clicking on the buttons that you want them to click on? Are they actually going to the pages that you think they're going to go to? And so it's pairing both of those together to see, did we want to apply the user research insights appropriately into our product to make it effective? Or is there some sort of disconnect? And that's how you can kind of like pair those two things together to kind of say like, okay, well, we found out in user research insights that people really care about this feature. But when we go on the website, no one can find the feature. People don't know where it is. It's hidden under a tab somewhere. And so that's like how you want to enable to like bridge that gap and say, hey, like people are interested in this feature. We need to make it easy to find so that when we look at when we look at the metrics, we can say, oh, people clicked on that page, they clicked on the thing, and then conversion increased because they saw the information on that page. That was a very like really not always that simple, but like that's typically kind of like the high level way of thinking about it, or at least how I think about it.
Awesome, thank you. So Daniel has a question. How do you plan experiments with your project manager?
Yeah. So really just kind of, I've had a bunch of different product managers, like, and they're all different. It really, I think, just depends on their personality, their work style. I've had some PMs, they're like, I have all the ideas, and they come to me with like wireframes and user flows, and I'm like, okay, let's take a step back, and I kind of work with them to kind of, make sure like, is their UX thinking going in the right direction? And then sometimes it's me coming up with all the ideas and putting some mocks together and presenting that to the product manager, saying these are the things that I think we should test. And then from there, it's really just balancing out, like, it's working with the product manager to say, how can we hit at the user goals that we know we want to hit at, but also make sure that we're hitting at the business metrics that we also want to hit at. So that's where it's important to kind of think through, like, the PM will help you understand, like, is this a really high traffic area of the site? Does this page actually lead, to conversion? What are the numbers that people, what are the metrics that everyone's caring about? And will this, design change actually lead to that? And so that's really what key, I think, with working with and how we plan those experiments is balancing out like engineering effort with how, will we think it'll move the needle on our business metrics, making sure it's going to improve the user experience or at least not harm the user experience. And it's really just kind of like finding like a compromise between all of those three things to build out a kind of a roadmap that hopefully makes sense. So yeah, it's really just balancing like engineering effort, what's going to actually move the needle. And so it's kind of like figuring out a compromise between all of those three things.
Cool. So Daniel has another question, and some of these questions have been upvoted, which is how I'm just kind of selecting them as I go through, but we'll get through as many as we can, I promise. So how do you concept work or show stakeholders new designs based on heuristic evaluation? Do you show one screen or one idea or several concepts at once?
Sure. I mean, it really just depends. I mean, it depends on if I can just mock it up pretty quickly. I think with like Therabody, like, and with Omaze, I was able to kind of be like, hey, like, here's all the different ways we can change this headline, and I would have all the visuals. I typically like to get as visual as possible, just because in the past, the product managers that I've worked with responded best to seeing the actual change live on site. I've had some product managers where I didn't have to necessarily mock things up. I could just like describe my idea in a Slack message, and they're like, great idea, let's go. And then, it depends on, I think, how easy it is to explain, or sometimes if your concept needs to be really kind of like mocked up. So like with Gusto, I really had to mock all of this stuff up. I can't just like send them through a learning journey. No one could visualize what that meant. And so I had to really come up with like some flows and really mock up like what is actually going to happen here. And so that's when I try not to do too much refine UI at the beginning. So I'm just working with current designs. I'm probably sometimes taking screenshots and just like adding things in just to kind of visualize the concept. Adding the arrows, showing this button clicks to this button, this will pop up, just kind of having everything in one place. And so, yeah, it really just depends on like how much is being changed. If it's just one change on like, if it's just the headline, it'll just be that one screen. With Gusto, it's all the screens. I kind of had to show like the whole user flow. But something that is really helpful, even if you're only making a change on one screen, sometimes, working with stakeholders, especially if they're not as familiar with the day-to-day of the product, like you're the one going in and diving into the product every single day. You're looking at it every day. You're listening to the customers. The stakeholders aren't. I mean, maybe they are. More often than not, they're like, they forget probably what the homepage looks like. And then they go to the homepage and they're like, why does this have this thing on it? And then everyone, freaks out. And so it's really helpful to mock up like a whole user flow, even if you're only making a change to one part of it. So kind of remind people like, what is the user seeing before they land on this page? What's going to happen after they land on this page? So just so they can get a concept of like, the change that we made to this page, like this is the ad that they saw beforehand. And so is that really just kind of getting people to understand like what the user is seeing when they land on this page so they can put themselves in that same mindset. And then also kind of understand like, how does that change connect to the rest of the funnel, which usually might be like a conversion funnel or a checkout flow or whatever it is. They want to kind of see like, how does this one change kind of connect to the whole kind of funnel that the user is going through. So I don't know if that made sense.
I'm muted. The same thing just happened to me. I clicked on the no. We're getting lots of thumbs up reactions. So I think it was very good. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect.
So in your experience, do you think studying front-end development is necessary to become a better designer when working with developers as a team?
That's a good question. I will say a base level understanding of front-end development is going to be helpful. You don't need to necessarily like learn how to like do all of the coding, but sometimes the best way to just get a basic understanding is to like do a little intro course, do some online stuff, just get a feel for what it's like to like work with HTML and CSS and JavaScript. But really it's really just kind of like, again, with, I think working with like data-driven teammates, is just learning how to speak their language. And so the more that you can kind of empathize and understand, what their job is like and what they're actually dealing with every single day and like how they're translating your Figma stuff to the web, the easier it'll be for you to kind of like, the less you'll have to go back and change your designs to like fit what the engineer can actually do. And so that's where it's just really helpful to have kind of like a base level understanding of coding, because when you're communicating with your engineers and you're saying, hey, I want this to look this way and this way and this way, it'll be a lot easier to communicate with them. Especially if you work with engineers that are very techy and using a lot of engineering jargon. you want to like, the more you can understand what those words mean, the easier it'll be to have those conversations. So that's kind of my tip, is like, you don't really need to become a front-end developer. Like if you asked me to write a line of code, I don't think I could, just like off the top of my head. But I've taken enough kind of classes and read enough articles and just had enough conversations with the engineers to just kind of like pick up the things that they talk about and get an understanding of like, what are the capabilities of the current tech stack, that kind of thing. I think that's really the key thing. Is also just like, same with product managers too, like just ask them to walk you through things if you don't understand. I'm sure an engineer will be happy to. They don't talk to a bunch of people a day. They spend most of their day coding. And so they might want to, sit and chat with you and talk about their work, or they can kind of like dive into more detail of like why maybe something that you designed is harder for them to implement into live code. So yeah, definitely taking advantage of all that stuff can help.
Cool. Yeah, that definitely makes a lot of sense. That's a question we get a lot from students, just about like bootcamp learning and developing and getting into UX UI. So thank you.
Yeah, it's also actually building on that. It's definitely helpful to like know a little bit about HTML and coding, because when I was at Shopify and Therabody, I was able to kind of like, if I want to just kind of like go into our tools and like make a little change. So if you have like a CMS or a testing tool where you can kind of like go into like the inspect tool and kind of like make some tweaks, kind of picking up some of that stuff can be kind of helpful, because it can help you kind of just be like, if we change this button, what would it look like? And that kind of thing. But I would say not like a hard requirement. I would say like that stuff, it'll just kind of like, you'll pick it up that as you continue to practice over and over again, it'll just kind of start to click. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. Cool. So I'll have one or two more questions. So Nicole asks, since your boot camp, where have you found like the most relevant types of learning aside from just doing on the job learning?
That's a good question. Since my boot camp, I would say most of the learning that I think just like being on Medium and like reading design blogs and just being in the design community, just constantly reading about like other people's experiences, I think just kind of helps. It helps kind of like form patterns in my head. Like the more you kind of just like see things over and over and over again, the more things start to click. And so I think that's how I've kind of just learned stuff along the way, is just like reading articles and just like diving into things. I don't read a ton of books or listen to a ton of podcasts. So for me, it tends to just be kind of like articles and stuff. I think also too, like there's one resource, there's a growth.design. It's a website that like basically has all these different case studies about growth design, and I follow that. Yeah, I'm trying to think like what else do I do to learn? Really just a lot of reading. And I'd like to, whenever if there's like, whenever like Figma does it, like there are like Figma config webinars, like I like to just kind of like whenever there's something that's interesting, that's like a topic that I don't know about, kind of like to join the webinar, join the like design conference or whatever. I like to like see if I can get my company to like cover the budget for design conferences. But yeah, those are fun too.
Yeah, it's definitely always really useful, I think, to like stay curious and upskill no matter what area of what field you're in.
Yeah, for sure.
So what are some ways that you ran split tests with your PM?
Yeah. Let's see. At Omaze, the way we had it set up was we actually worked with a company called Chrometrics, and they because we didn't have an internal team to help us with engineering, everyone was focused on other things, and so we had like a program manager, a growth strategist, some engineers, and like they had engineering and QA like with that like spin up our tests for us. And so the way that we ran split tests with my product manager was we would get everything built up. We would actually send it over to the program manager at Chrometrics. They would build it for us, and then we would monitor the results. We would make sure everything was approved before they pushed it live, and then we would have meetings with them where we would talk about the results. At Therabody, was just literally 3 designers in a room playing around with the testing tool, trying to figure out how to make stuff work. Because me and my boss was like, he was kind of the product manager, but he was the head of design. And so really it was just us 3 all collaborating. And really the key was like making sure that at least one of us was wearing a product manager hat, so that we were considering, design and business and weighing that together. And at Gusto, the way that I work with my product manager is really it's just Slack. Every time we have random ideas, we're messaging each other on Slack. We have, consistent meetings where we constantly are like, especially if you're like in an agile, environment, there's probably like sprint plannings and things like that. And that's usually where people will bring up, the product manager will probably bring up like, this is the primary focus of this sprint. It's, these are the numbers that we need to move. And I'll either kind of like go off on my own and like come up with a bunch of ideas and bring them back, or I'll set up some time to brainstorm if I have nothing. So if I have no ideas and like if I'm stuck, I can kind of like work with the product manager, say like, yeah, let's do a brainstorm, let's get everyone in a room to like come up with some ideas. More often than not, though, I probably already have like a bunch of things already that I want to test, and so I'm just figuring out the right time to tell my product manager about that idea so that it sticks and she remembers it, gets it into a ticket, and then it gets implemented. So yeah. I don't know if that's it. Every company has been so wildly different in terms of like how we ran the split tests. And at Gusto too, we have our internal team handles all of our testing. So we have my whole pod is like the testing pod, which is really nice. So no one external is really managing anything. All of our engineers internally are managing all of our tests and building everything.
Cool. Well, Thank you so much, Jessica, for answering all of the questions that folks have brought to the table today. We have less than 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure that I just address a couple of the topics around the course that I see students are asking about. If you have specific questions about like anything related to the course in terms of like, oh, I might be going like on a vacation, or I'm concerned about the time commitment or something like that, you can feel free to either schedule in a call with Kelly. Kelly is the product manager for this particular course, or you can definitely feel free to email me. I'm helping support with this course moving forward. So if you want to schedule in a call, you can definitely feel free to do so with Kelly. If you want to just start the communication off via email, feel free to email me. I'm happy to help however I can. We will be running later cohorts of this course. So if the June 4th cohort doesn't work for you, we don't have one on the calendar yet. So I would definitely recommend enrolling for this if you're really interested in it, but we do plan to hopefully run it again in the future. And just as a reminder, feel free to get in touch with us. We're always happy to help. If you have questions about the course structure, course projects, how many folks are going to be in the course with you, all those different things, we can definitely chat through on a more individual level. I see that some of y'all are asking if there's going to be a recording sent. Yes, as long as you registered for the event, you will be receiving a recording to your email once it has concluded. And you'll be able to reference this and, all the topics covered. Again, the only thing you won't be able to see live will be the chat and the Q&A. But we've chatted through a lot of those in real time, so you can always go back and reference our questions and answers later. All right, everybody, I think we are going to wrap up just to make sure that we don't go over time. I want to be respectful of your time, respectful of Jessica's time. Thank you so much, Jessica, for joining us today. It was phenomenal to have you. This was such a great presentation.
Yes, thank you guys so much.
Cool. Well, I hope to hear from many of you soon, and I hope that y'all have a wonderful weekend. Happy Friday. Bye, everybody. Thank you again, Jessica. Have a good one.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.